There are some nights when I still wake up screaming, my skin crawling with phantom sensations, feeling the sting of 1,000 needles piercing my flesh. There are moments when I look at my hands, scarred and marked by what I survived, and I can barely believe I'm still alive to tell this story. But I am alive. Against all odds, against every expectation, against death itself, I survived what they did to me. My name is Princess Noor, and I need to tell you about the night they tried to kill me in the most horrific way imaginable. Not with a sword or poison or a gunshot, but with creatures whose venom turns blood to fire, whose sting brings agony beyond description. They locked me in a room with hundreds of scorpions and left me there to die slowly, painfully, screaming for mercy that would never come. But before I tell you how I survived, before I share the details of that nightmare that still haunts my every breath, I want you to understand why this story matters. Because this isn't just about me. This is about power, jealousy, betrayal, and the lengths people will go to destroy those who threaten them. This is about the darkness that can exist behind palace walls, behind smiles and political alliances, behind the facade of nobility and honor. If this story impacts you, if it makes you realize how precious life is and how evil can wear a crown, then please, I ask you to subscribe to this channel. Share this video with everyone you know, because stories like mine need to be told. Survivors need to be heard. And the more people who know the truth about what happens in the shadows of power, the harder it becomes for such atrocities to continue. Your subscription, your comment, your share, it all matters. It all helps give voice to those who have been silenced. Now, let me take you back to where this nightmare began. I was 22 years old, the youngest daughter of the royal family, and unlike my siblings, I had never been interested in politics or power. I loved art and poetry. I spent my days painting in my studio, creating beauty, trying to add light to a world that often seemed too dark. My father indulged this passion, seeing me as his gentle daughter who posed no threat to anyone, who wanted nothing more than to live quietly and create. But my eldest cousin, Prince Rashid, saw something different in me. He saw a problem. You see, my father had no sons, only daughters. The succession was uncertain, complicated, and Rashid believed he was the rightful heir to the throne. He had spent years positioning himself, making alliances, eliminating anyone who might challenge his claim. And then my father made an announcement that changed everything. During a public ceremony, my father declared that he was proud of all his daughters, but he was especially impressed by my wisdom and compassion. He said that leadership wasn't about strength or aggression, but about understanding and care for the people. He didn't explicitly name me as his successor, but everyone in that room understood the implication. The whispers started immediately. Princess Noor might become the next ruler. Princess Noor might inherit the kingdom. I saw Rashid's face that day, and I saw pure hatred burning in his eyes. I tried to approach him later, to tell him I had no interest in ruling, that he could have what he wanted, but he turned away from me without a word. I should have understood then what was coming. I should have recognized the danger. But I was naive. I believed that family, even in a royal setting, had some boundaries that wouldn't be crossed. I was wrong. 2 weeks after that ceremony, I received an invitation to visit Rashid's private estate on the edge of the desert. The message was warm, friendly even. He wrote that he wanted to reconcile, to discuss the future, to ensure there was no conflict between us. He invited me to spend the weekend at his palace, to talk as family, to find peace between us. My mother warned me not to go. "Rashid is dangerous, Noor," she said, her voice trembling. "He has done terrible things to maintain his position. Please, stay here where you're safe." But I didn't listen. I wanted to believe in the goodness of people. I wanted to believe that family bonds could overcome political ambitions. I wanted to be the peacemaker, the one who could heal divisions. So I accepted his invitation. The journey to Rashid's estate took 3 hours by car, driving through endless stretches of golden sand, past ancient rock formations that rose from the desert like forgotten monuments. His palace was beautiful, built in traditional style with high walls and courtyards filled with fountains and palm trees. When I arrived, Rashid greeted me with a smile that I now recognize was the smile of a predator welcoming its prey. "Cousin Noor," he said, embracing me warmly. "Thank you for coming. I know we haven't always seen eye to eye, but family is everything. Come, let me show you to your rooms. You must be tired from the journey." He led me through corridors decorated with priceless art and ancient tapestries, speaking pleasantly about nothing important, playing the role of the gracious host perfectly. My rooms were in a wing of the palace that seemed isolated from everything else, but they were beautiful, with silk curtains and expensive furniture, and a balcony that looked out over the desert. "Rest tonight," Rashid said as he prepared to leave. "Tomorrow we'll have dinner and talk about everything. I want us to find a way forward together." I should have noticed that he locked the door from the outside. I should have paid attention to the fact that there were no servants in this wing, no guards, no other people at all. But I was exhausted from the journey, and I trusted him because I was foolish enough to believe that blood meant something. I went to sleep that night thinking that perhaps reconciliation was possible, that perhaps everything would be all right. I woke up to the sound of something moving in my room. At first, I thought I was dreaming. The room was dark, lit only by moonlight filtering through the curtains. But there was definitely something there, multiple somethings, moving across the floor with a scratching, skittering sound that made every hair on my body stand on end. I reached for the lamp beside my bed and turned it on. What I saw made my blood turn to ice. Scorpions. Dozens of them. No, hundreds of them. Covering the floor of my room, crawling over each other. Their tails raised and ready to strike, their pincers clicking in the darkness. They were everywhere. On the floor, climbing the walls, on my furniture, and some were already on my bed. I screamed. I screamed so loud my throat felt like it would tear. I jumped up onto the headboard trying to get away from them, but they were climbing up the bedposts. I looked toward the door, thinking I could run, but the floor was a writhing carpet of venomous creatures. There was no escape, no way out, just me and hundreds of deadly scorpions in a locked room. I understood then what Rashid had done. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't some horrible mistake. He had done this deliberately. He had filled my room with scorpions while I slept, had locked me in, had left me here to die in agony. The first sting came seconds later. A scorpion on the bedsheet. One I hadn't seen in my panic struck my leg. The pain was immediate and excruciating, like a white-hot needle being driven into my flesh. I cried out and tried to brush it away, but in doing so, I disturbed several others. They struck at once. My hand, my arm, my foot. Each sting brought a new wave of pain that made the previous one seem mild by comparison. I tried to jump down from the bed to reach the door, but I landed among dozens of scorpions. They swarmed over my bare feet, my ankles. The stings came so fast I lost count. 5, 10, 15. Each one felt like liquid fire being injected into my veins. I stumbled toward the door, slipping and falling, crushing scorpions beneath me but being stung by dozens more. I pounded on the door, screaming for help, begging anyone who might hear me to open it, to save me. But no one came. The wing was isolated, and even if there had been servants nearby, Rashid had surely ordered them to ignore any sounds from my room. I was completely alone with my tormentors. The venom was working through my system now. My vision began to blur. My heart raced frantically, irregularly. Sweat poured from my body. Nausea gripped my stomach. My muscles began to spasm and convulse. The pain from each sting was building rather than fading, creating a symphony of agony that consumed my entire consciousness. I fell to the floor, unable to stand anymore. Scorpions crawled over me, and I was too weak to even brush them away. More stings, more venom, more pain. I could feel my body shutting down, could feel death approaching like a dark wave ready to pull me under. I thought of my mother, who had warned me. I thought of my art, my paintings that would never be finished. I thought of all the days I would never see, the sunrises I would never paint, the life that was being stolen from me in this horrific way. And I wept. Not just from the pain, though it was unbearable, but from the cruelty of it. To be killed by your own family member in such a torturous way, alone and terrified. But then, through the fog of pain and venom, I remembered something. A story my grandmother had told me when I was a child, about a healer in our family's history who had survived a scorpion attack. She had said that the key to survival was not to panic, not to let your heart race too fast and spread the venom quickly through your body. She had said to stay still, to breathe slowly, to find a place in your mind where the pain couldn't reach you. It seemed impossible. How could I not panic when I was being stung to death? How could I slow my breathing when agony consumed me? But I had no other choice. If I continued fighting, continued moving, my racing heart would pump the venom through my system faster, and I would die within the hour. So I did something that took every ounce of willpower I possessed. I stopped moving. I lay completely still on the floor, even as scorpions crawled over me, even as some continued to sting. I focused all my attention on my breathing. Slow breath in, slow breath out. In, out, in, out. I retreated into my mind, into a place I had created in my imagination years ago, a safe space where I went when the pressures of royal life became too much. I imagined myself in my art studio, standing before a blank canvas. Each breath was a brush stroke. Each moment of stillness was a color being added to the painting. I built that painting in my mind, stroke by stroke, detail by detail, using all my concentration to focus on creation rather than destruction, on life rather than death. Hours passed, the longest hours of my existence. The scorpions, having no more reason to strike at an unmoving target, gradually stopped attacking. Some crawled away. Others simply stayed on or near me, their work done. The venom continued to ravage my body. My temperature spiked and then plummeted. My muscles seized and released in waves. My heart rhythm became dangerously irregular. But by keeping still, by keeping my heart rate as low as I could manage, I slowed the spread of the venom enough that it didn't reach immediately lethal concentrations in my vital organs. When the sun rose and light began filtering through the curtains, I had been stung 47 times. I know this because later, in the hospital, they would count each sting mark. 47 doses of venom from Arabian fat-tailed scorpions, one of the most dangerous species in the world. Each sting alone can be lethal. Multiple stings are almost always fatal. But I was still breathing. The door opened around mid-morning. I heard it but couldn't move, couldn't even open my eyes. I heard Rashid's voice, speaking to someone else. Check if she's dead yet. If she is, arrange for the body to be found in the desert. We'll say she went for a walk and was attacked by scorpions naturally. A tragic accident. I heard footsteps approaching. A servant, probably, sent to check on Rashid's victim. I felt a hand touch my neck, checking for a pulse. There was a long pause. Then the servant's voice, shaking with shock. My prince. She's still alive. Barely. But she's alive. There was a moment of terrible silence. Then Rashid's voice, cold and furious. Impossible. No one survives that many stings. Check again. The servant checked again. She has a pulse, my prince. It's weak and irregular, but it's there. What should I do? Another long pause. I could imagine Rashid's mind working, calculating. If he left me here to die, and I somehow survived anyway, if I lived long enough to tell someone what had happened, he would be exposed. But if he called for help, if he discovered his cousin had been attacked by scorpions in his palace, he could play the role of the concerned family member who saved me. "Call for a medical helicopter immediately," he said finally. "Tell them Princess Noor has been attacked by scorpions and is in critical condition. Move quickly." They transported me to the capital city's best hospital, the same hospital where I would later work as a volunteer helping other victims of violence. The doctors said my survival was a medical miracle. With the amount of venom in my system, I should have been dead within 2 hours. The fact that I had kept myself still, had slowed my heart rate through sheer willpower, had saved my life. But it was a near thing. I spent 3 weeks in intensive care, my body fighting to process and eliminate the venom, my organs struggling to recover from the damage. Rashid visited me in the hospital, playing the role of the devastated cousin perfectly. He brought flowers and sat by my bedside with tears in his eyes, telling everyone who would listen how terrible he felt that this had happened at his estate. He launched an investigation into how scorpions could have gotten into my room, claiming it must have been sabotage by some enemy of the family. But I knew, and he knew that I knew. When we were alone for just a moment, when no nurses or guards were nearby, he leaned close to my bed and whispered, "You should have died, Noor. It would have been easier for everyone. But don't worry, there will be other opportunities. Next time, I'll make sure the job is done properly." I couldn't speak yet, my vocal cords still damaged from the screaming and the venom's effects. But I looked into his eyes, and I made a silent promise. I would survive. I would recover. And I would make sure he never hurt anyone again. My recovery was long and painful. The venom had caused damage to my nervous system, my kidneys, my heart. I had to learn to walk again, as my muscles had been severely affected. The scars from the stings covered my arms, legs, and torso, permanent reminders of that night. But worse than the physical scars were the psychological ones. I developed severe anxiety and PTSD. I couldn't sleep without nightmares of scorpions crawling over me. I couldn't be in dark rooms. Any sudden movement in my peripheral vision would send me into a panic attack. But I refused to let Rashid break me. I refused to let him win. Once I was strong enough, I went to my father and told him everything. I showed him the sting marks, explained the locked door, revealed Rashid's whispered threat in the hospital. My father was horrified. He launched a quiet investigation, and what they found confirmed my story. Rashid had purchased hundreds of scorpions from illegal dealers in the weeks before my visit. Servants at his estate, when promised protection, testified that he had ordered them to stay away from my wing that night, to ignore any sounds they might hear. The evidence was undeniable. Rashid was arrested quietly to avoid public scandal. He was stripped of his titles, his properties, and his freedom. He now spends his days in a secure prison, his dreams of power reduced to the confines of a small cell. It's less than he deserves, but it's justice nonetheless. As for me, I had to rebuild myself from the ashes of what that night had destroyed. I went through intensive therapy, learning to manage my PTSD, learning to sleep again, learning to trust again. It took years, but gradually I found my way back to life. I returned to my art, and I found that my paintings had changed. They were darker now, but also deeper. They explored themes of survival, resilience, transformation. The pain had changed me, but it hadn't destroyed me. My father eventually named me as his successor, not because I wanted power, but because he said I had proven that I had the strength to rule with both compassion and courage. I accepted, knowing that I could use that position to help others who had been victims of violence, to create laws that protected the vulnerable, to ensure that what happened to me never happened to anyone else. Today, I am 31 years old. The scars on my body have faded somewhat, though they'll never disappear completely. The scars on my mind are also permanent, but I've learned to live with them, to transform them from wounds into sources of strength. I wake up every morning, grateful to be alive, grateful for every breath, every sunrise, every moment that Rashid tried to steal from me but failed. I still paint. My studio in the palace is filled with canvases that tell the story of my survival, each one a testament to the human spirit's ability to endure the unendurable. One painting shows a figure emerging from darkness surrounded by scorpions, her hands raised not in surrender, but in defiance. Another shows a woman rebuilding herself piece by piece, her broken parts becoming stronger in the reconstruction. These paintings hang in galleries now, and people who see them often tell me they don't know my story, but they feel something powerful in the images. They feel survival. They feel hope. I've also established a foundation that helps victims of attempted murder and assault, particularly those attacked by family members. The betrayal of trust by someone who should love and protect you leaves a unique kind of damage, and I wanted to create a space where survivors could heal together, where they could know they're not alone in their pain or their recovery. When I speak to other survivors, when I look into their eyes and see the same fear and trauma I once felt, I tell them what I learned in that room full of scorpions. I tell them that survival sometimes means staying still when every instinct screams at you to panic. That strength sometimes looks like breathing slowly when your heart wants to explode with terror. That courage sometimes means simply refusing to die when death seems inevitable. I tell them that the people who hurt us want us to break, to disappear, to become nothing. But we can choose differently. We can choose to survive. We can choose to transform our pain into purpose. We can choose to emerge from the darkness stronger than before. The night Rashid locked me in that room, he thought he was writing the end of my story. He thought the scorpions would silence me forever, that my threat to his power would dissolve into the desert sand along with my body. But he was wrong. That night wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one written in survival and resilience, and the unbreakable determination to turn suffering into meaning. I look at my hands now, scarred from venom and stings, and I see them as warriors' hands, survivors' hands, hands that create beauty from pain, that help others climb out of darkness, that refuse to be defeated no matter what horrors they've endured. There are still nights when I wake up feeling the phantom stings, when I check my room 3 times before I can sleep, when the trauma surfaces and reminds me of what I survived. But those moments are becoming less frequent. And even in those moments, I remind myself that I am here. I am alive. I am stronger than the venom that tried to kill me, stronger than the hatred that motivated my cousin, stronger than anyone who has ever tried to destroy me. This is my story. This is my truth. This is my testimony that no matter how dark the night, no matter how many scorpions surround you, no matter how impossible survival seems, you can make it through. You can endure. You can emerge on the other side transformed, scarred perhaps, but alive and stronger than before. To anyone watching this who is facing their own scorpions, their own impossible situation, their own moment of terror and pain, I want you to know that you are not alone. I see you. I understand your fear. And I am living proof that survival is possible even when it seems impossible. Hold on. Keep breathing. Stay strong. You can make it through this. And to everyone else, I ask you to remember that behind every survivor, there is a story of unimaginable pain and incredible strength. We carry our scars, visible and invisible, and we need your support, your understanding, your willingness to believe us when we tell you what we've survived. Don't look away from our pain. Don't minimize our trauma. Stand with us. Fight for us. Help us build a world where such atrocities become harder and harder to commit. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for bearing witness to my survival. If this testimony touched you, if it made you think differently about survival and strength, if it inspired you to support survivors, or to appreciate your own life more deeply, then please subscribe to this channel. Share this video. Let other people know that survival stories need to be told, that survivors deserve to be heard, that even in the darkest circumstances, hope and life can prevail. Together, we can create a world where fewer people face the kind of horrors I survived. Together, we can support survivors and hold perpetrators accountable. Together, we can transform pain into power and darkness into light. I am Princess Noor. I am a survivor. And I am here to tell you that no matter what tries to destroy you, you have the strength to survive. Never give up. Never surrender. Keep breathing. Keep fighting. Keep living. Because you matter. Your life matters. Your survival matters. And the world needs you to be here. Thank you for being part of my journey. Thank you for caring. And remember, every day you wake up is a victory against everything that tried to destroy you. Celebrate that victory. Honor that survival. And keep moving forward, one breath at a time.